If you're an online business owner and you are not using storytelling in your sales and marketing, you are missing out. Storytelling is by far the most effective form of human communication on the planet in both business and in social settings. And when you can take your sales message, your marketing message for your company, your product, or your service and wrap it up in a good story, your audience can't help but listen to you. My name is Paul Macetta, and I help online business owners create powerful brand stories that demonstrate their value in a way that is different and superior to their competitors, so they stand out from the crowd and get more clients, customers, and sales consistently and predictably. And in the description of this video, I'm going to put a link to my brand new book, The Storytelling Blueprint. You can go grab it along with a bundle of bonuses for about what you would pay for a large cup of coffee from Starbucks. But in today's video, as it relates to storytelling, I want to talk about ways that you can open a story. There are actually 10 captivating ways that you can open up a story. And today I want to share them with you because the opening of the story is arguably just as important as the story itself. Because you could have the greatest story in the world, but if your opening is weak, your audience isn't even going to listen to the rest of the story. So with that, we're going to jump right in and we're going to go over 10 captivating story openers. Number one is to start with a provocative question. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to lose everything overnight? What if I told you that a single decision could change your life forever? So anytime you ask a question to the audience, you engage them, because when the human mind hears a question, it can't help but try to answer it. So you immediately engage people when you ask them a question, but asking a provocative question is that much more powerful because it instantly engages people. The second thing you could do is begin with a shocking fact. Did you know that 90% of startups fail within the first year? Ours almost became part of that statistic. Or every 40 seconds, someone in the world dies by suicide. This is the story of how we helped prevent one. What this does is it strengthens the credibility of the idea that you want to communicate in the story. You see, every story should communicate one single idea. And that's one of the first things that I teach my students. You know, a lot of my students, clients, and customers, they usually run into two problems when it comes to stories. They either think that they don't have any stories to tell, or they have too many stories that they want to tell, but those stories aren't actually relevant to the idea that they want to convey. So what I always tell people is if you have a choice between a really captivating story that doesn't really convey an idea or a subpar story that does convey the idea, always choose the subpar story, because you could always add elements to the story later to dramatize it and make it better and more engaging. But you never want to tell a captivating story that doesn't convey a specific idea, because then the listener is going to feel like you wasted their time. So the first thing I do with my students is I help them get crystal clear on the idea that they want to convey, beginning with a shocking but true fact, especially using a statistic or some sort of data that reinforces it, adds tons of credibility and proof to the idea that you want to convey. The next one is to convey or use a powerful quote. So something like, as Nelson Mandela once said, "It always seems impossible until it's done. This is the story of our impossible journey." Or Winston Churchill famously said, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts." Our story is a testament to this. Again, similar to using a shocking fact, using a powerful quote enables you to borrow the authority and credibility from an authority or an expert or a high-ranking person in some sort of field that again enables you to reinforce the idea that you're conveying in your message and in your story. The next is to describe a vivid scene. The room was dark except for the flickering of a single candle. Outside, a storm raged, mirroring the chaos in my mind. In the bustling streets of New York City, amidst the noise and crowds, stood a small cafe where our journey began. So, what this does is it projects the listener into a scene the same way every single movie or series that you watch on Netflix or HBO or Cinemax or whatever it might be opens up with a specific scene. You're doing the same thing here. You're projecting the audience into the scene of the story. Next one is to share a personal anecdote. So I remember the exact moment when my world fell apart. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I just received a phone call that changed everything. At age 30, I found myself sleeping on my friend's couch, jobless and penniless, but that was the beginning of my greatest adventure. So what we're doing here is we're opening a loop. And so what we're doing is, so first and foremost, what makes a story powerful and effective is when you take the main character on a journey where they have to overcome some sort of challenge. So maybe they're in a situation where there's a lot of things going against them, and then they have to overcome a bunch of challenges, and then at the end they are successful, and ultimately they figure something out. They have some sort of an epiphany. They have some sort of a transformation. And so what we're doing here is we're creating that contrast immediately by saying, at age 30, I found myself sleeping on my friend's couch. I was jobless and penniless, but that was the beginning of my greatest adventure. So we're creating that immediate contrast between, here I was jobless and penniless, but it turned out to be my greatest adventure. Now there's an open loop because now the listener wants to know, well, how did you go from jobless and penniless to what you're saying is your greatest adventure? Next is to introduce a relatable conflict. Imagine waking up one day to find out your entire bank account has been emptied. That's exactly what happened to me. She had everything she ever wanted until one decision threatened to take it all away. Again, a very essential part of any story is conflict. There has to be some sort of conflict that the main character is experiencing. And so if you open up the story immediately with the conflict, it engages the listener and makes them want to see how the hero or the protagonist overcame that conflict. Next one, which is a really good one, is to start in the middle of the action. As the plane plummeted towards the ground, I could only think of one thing. How did I end up here? As I was running through the dark alley, heart pounding, footsteps echoing behind me, this is not how I expected my night to go. This is one of my favorite ones. Whenever I'm coming up with a repertoire of stories that I'm going to use in my business or even in my personal life, I generally like to start in the middle of the action because the listener cannot resist. Once you open up in the middle of the action, what you're doing is, again, you're projecting them into the story, but they begin to take on the feelings and the emotions and the experiences that the protagonist is having. And so when they begin to feel that, you start changing their brain chemistry because they start identifying with the hero and they want to see how the hero is going to get out of this situation. Next is to present an unusual or surprising situation. The letter was addressed to me, but the name on the envelope wasn't mine. This was the first clue in a mystery that would unravel my entire life. I walked into the office and saw a penguin sitting at my desk. No one else seemed to notice. That's when I realized something was very wrong. So what this is the use of a pattern interrupt, where we're interrupting the typical pattern of thinking that the audience is having because we're turning their mind upside down and making them want to try to figure out why this situation is so unusual and how it ties into the story. Next one is another one of my favorites. It's the use of a metaphor or an analogy. I always say that metaphors and analogies are like the cousins of stories. Life is like a chess game full of strategic moves and unexpected twists. Let me tell you about the checkmate that changed our company. Navigating the startup world is like sailing through a storm. Here's how we weathered through the worst of it. So I always say that the magic in communication is not the ability to take simple things and make them sound more complex, but the ability to take complex things and simplify them. Metaphors and analogies are probably the best tools out there in terms of simplifying complex information, because what it does is it creates a parallel between two things, something that the listener is very familiar with and the thing that you're trying to communicate to them. And then the last one is to pose a hypothetical scenario. What would you do if you woke up tomorrow and your business vanished overnight? Imagine a world where every problem you face has a simple, elegant solution. Sounds impossible, right? That's what we thought too until now. So again, these are 10 powerful story openers that you can use in your sales, in your marketing, even in your everyday social interactions to begin a story when you really want to grip the listener by the throat and have them pay attention to every word that you say. Once again, guys, I just put the finishing touches on my book, The Storytelling Blueprint. I'll put a link in the description. Like I said, you can grab it for less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks, and you're going to get a whole bunch of bonuses included with it. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like, leave me a comment, and if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that and hit the bell notification so you get updated when I release more videos like this.